The mood of federal ministers now negotiating in London will not be as aggressive as that of their army, but they will be as tough and determined. Their diplomatic assault on London was planned in this building here, the administrative headquarters of the Federation in Al-Ittihad. Throughout the talks, the main battle of words will be over the defense of South Arabia after 1968. South Arabia's case, as put to me by several of the ministers before they left for London, is that if Britain fails to provide a new defense treaty for after independence, in addition to providing a lot of money for South Arabia to build up her own defences, Britain will be making it too easy for Egypt's President Nasser to take control of the area. Aden alone will lose about £16 million a year from Britain's withdrawal. That's what the base ploughs into the colony's economy in rents, wages and over-the-counter trading. It's believed that federal ministers have been given an indication that Britain is prepared to continue aid at the present rate of £12 million a year for 2 years after independence. So unless the delegation in London can win promises of increased aid from Britain, South Arabia may find herself setting out from independence with a net loss of £4 million on its present income. The most urgent need before any sort of development can take place is for a vast improvement to South Arabia's communications. This beach road is the only land link between Aden and the coastal states of the Federation, and even to some of the states of the interior. At high tide it's sometimes impassable, and travellers who haven't bothered to study the tide tables for this part of the Indian Ocean have sometimes come to grief. When Britain's intended withdrawal from Aden was first announced, the Aden Chronicle proclaimed bitterly that Britain's achievement was 70 miles of tarmac in 70 years. The cotton belt of the Aden Delta. It's the most prosperous area of the whole of the South Arabian Federation outside Aden. 15 years ago, this plain was arid desert land and the scene of bloody tribal feuds. But prosperity in terms of hard cash, just over £1 million a year, part of which is passed on to farmers in the form of a dividend, is hard to detect in the sleepy streets of Jar, the capital of the Lower Jaffa. The cotton crop from the 50,000 acres now under cultivation is top quality. It's considered to be as good as the Sudan's and better than Egypt's. Venture was started in 1948 with a loan from Britain. The last instalment of the loan repayment is to be paid this week. Most of the 300 workers employed in the factory are from the Yemen. Local people are too busy in the fields preparing and picking the crop. The size of the crop depends on the floods. There is no rainfall. With funds to provide modern methods of irrigation and guarantee water supplies, the expansion of the cotton industry could play a key role in South Arabia's development. Beyond the Aden Delta, the mountains of the Upper Jaffa state, not yet in the Federation, and the undemarcated border with the Yemen. According to British officials, few white men have ever dared set foot in the Upper Jaffa. Tribe plots against tribe, and clan makes war against clan. The only thing the tribesmen hate more than foreigners, it's said, is each other. The terrain and the tribesmen on either side of the mountains are less fierce, but here life goes on at a pace and fashion more like the 17th century than the 20th. The streets of Mukeras, the capital village of Aden state, don't echo with shouts of one man, one vote. That's what the menfolk in these states will be getting in 18 months' time. The question of whether or not to give women the vote has still to be decided. But in towns and villages where the windows of houses are made deliberately small to prevent their womenfolk inside being seen, this would be a huge step to take. The status symbol for all tribesmen is a gun, and the standard currency is not cash but ammunition. Ordinary families in the interior have rifles, the better ones have Bren guns, and the top people have bazookas. partly because of the import of rifles into Aden by the Crown agents, ostensibly for self-defense along the Yemen frontier, inter-tribal warfare is still deadly. The curse of the blood feud hangs over every village. There is even a specific price list for death. A tribesman who commits cold-blooded murder has the choice of being killed himself or raising £2,000 to pay as compensation to his victim's relatives. Because farming in the interior is mostly of a subsistence nature, farmers only toil when they have to. In most of the states of the Federation, the system of farming is still essentially feudal. The ruling families own most of the farming land. The villagers have to pay for their plots either in cash or with part of their produce. The feudal system is the chief target of attack by Arab socialists. They point to it as proof of their accusations that ruling families are exploiting the masses. British officials in South Arabia counter with the argument that the system works and that the traditional rulers enjoy the support of the majority of the people. But even the most optimistic officials won't estimate the chances of this traditional way of life surviving a possible overdose of Cairo-inspired revolutionary medicine. A more immediate threat to farmers is an appalling shortage of water. When they draw water from the wells, they have to hump it on their backs, sometimes by mule if they're lucky, to their fields, a distance for some of them of several miles. When we were in Mukeras, we saw the dynamiting of the last section of a new well. The event was celebrated with a dance in the village square, and the dancers were favoured by the attendance of the Wakil Naib, Ahmed bin Muhammad, a sort of municipal mayor who stands in when the ruler is away. The Wakil Naib arrived looking as though he was going to a fancy dress party, disguised perhaps as a portable armoury. So far, the revolutionary forces of Arab nationalism and Arab socialism have made little or no impression on the traditional way of life in the states of the Federation outside Aden. But in the marketplace of this village near Dala, a warning perhaps that two totally opposite philosophies may be about to clash head-on. On a consignment of tins of solid brilliantine, the presence of Gamal Abdel Nasser, President of the United Arab Republic. One man who has no doubts about President Nasser's intentions in South Arabia is Sir Richard Turnbull, the British High Commissioner in Aden.
Well, I'm not one of the pundits of the Foreign Office, and so maybe I don't have the full picture. But Nasser is certainly a great menace to South Arabia. And there's not the slightest doubt that if we went away, he would like to dominate the place. Whether he would produce a physical Egyptian presence, I don't know. But I don't think the reason we're leaving Aden is because we think that Egypt has ceased to be a very important factor in the Middle East.
You think it unwise to play down Nasser's ambitions in this area?
Well, I think one has to face the facts as they are. And you only have to listen to the broadcasts from Cairo and from Taiz and from Sana'a to recognize what their ambitions are. They say openly that it is their desire to drive these horrible imperialists into the sea and to remove not only to remove all vestiges of colonialism and so on from the country, but to make it extremely difficult for us to continue to operate here and to leave the place in a stable, economically viable condition.
If I could ask you finally, Sir Richard, what do you think in your own mind his ambitions are for Saudi Arabia?
I shall end up in the Tower of London if I pursue this course too far.